All right, we've started. So, yeah, Patrick, yeah, tell us a little about yourself.
Hey man, well, happy New Year. Hope things are good with you.
Yes, they are very good. How was your new year as well?
It was great. It was great. I managed to hydrate. I managed to rehydrate for our talk. Things are going pretty well. Um, yeah, I mean, a little about me, man. I'm a character modeler. I've been working in the video game industry since 2006.
Hmm.
I think that was my first official hire date, and before that, I got into making mods with my colleagues in college, 2003, 2004, and 2005. Um, I worked on uh, I worked on Unreal Tournament 2K3
Hmm.
mods, um, which I realize is very long ago. But yeah, I'm a character modeler. I love video games. I've been playing them since I was a kid. I made them into my career, and I stumbled across your content not too long ago, and thought it was really funny. Especially, the like we had spoke about before, the LinkedIn comments that you and your brother had put together, and I thought they were very funny. And I heard in your podcast that you were looking to talk to someone with some experience, and I fit that bill. I thought I'd reach out and say what's up.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, oh man, the LinkedIn comments and stuff is so funny. There's no one else that's doing it, which I'm really surprised about. There's just so much stuff on LinkedIn that is just so outrageous and bad. Um,
Mhm.
It's just absolutely nuts. But what I really want to talk to you, like you've got a lot of experience. I really want to ask you about, like, I call them the glory times, right? I never got to personally experience it myself because I'm like, born in '99. But yeah, I want you to kind of explain how those times were back, like, when you first started and around about there, just to kind of give a sense to all the junior people who want to get into the industry, just how it was.
It was definitely different. I will say that it was definitely different. I was looking at your iceberg image, and I enjoyed those two podcasts. And down at the bottom, I saw the Nerf gun wars, and I smiled to myself. I
Oh
still
man.
have I still have a couple of those Nerf guns laying around my office from the different eras. Yeah, back when I started, I think I got into the industry just as the winds were changing, and it was starting to become more like how we see the video game industry today. But I did have the opportunity to work at some cool places early in like the early mid 2000s that were still kind of old school development places, which were good and bad. Like we had a lot of the old problems, like crunching for E3 deadlines, throwing away huge sections of work because they were just demos.
Mhm.
Sleeping under our desks, working ridiculous hours, and not getting, the best compensation. But at the same time, it was just so awesome. I was a young guy. I got started when I was 21. I think in 2006 I was 21,
Mhm.
and it was just awesome to make video games. It was awesome to be where it was happening. I was in Los Angeles, California. Got hired by Activision to work on games like Call of Duty.
Wow.
Call of Duty was so cool, and I worked on Tony Hawk and eventually Guitar Hero, and you know beer Fridays. Like the place was, we would work most of Friday, but like 3 o'clock, the beers would start getting cracked, and everyone would just chill out and talk about whatever. It was like a lot of camaraderie, a lot of just cool people to hang out with and talk about life and whatever. There was also the occasional, situation. Like one story I love to tell is I was very junior, and I had just started working at Neversoft Entertainment, which doesn't exist anymore. And there was big conference room that had a glass wall. So you could walk by it and you could see into the conference room, and the other side of the wall was sheetrock, essentially. And there was this huge hole in the sheetrock wall. And I remember asking my boss, like, what's up with that? And he starts laughing, and then another guy starts laughing, another senior guy starts laughing, and they're kind of like, they kind of go back and forth about like, well, you see, there was a Beer Friday incident where two very senior people drank a little too much and got into a literal fist fight in in the meeting room, and one put the other through the sheetrock wall.
Oh my.
Which it may not be, the best experience, but I thought that was hilarious. And it was just a different time. It was just a completely different time. That would never fly these days. You'd be out on your ass before, like, well, one, drinking at work most of the time these days is pretty frowned upon, just in general. I don't blame, I understand. But it was more of a culture of just, we're making cool things. Like, we're not part of, we're in the tech world, but we're not a bunch of tech nerds. We're not wearing our ties and our slacks. Like, we're making cool shit. It was more of like a rock and roll entertainment world than straight-laced tech world. And I think that those lines have like really blurred. Like, you don't have to, there's no one's saying you got to wear a polo shirt to work, but it's so corporate these days. Like, even small studios are so corporate that these types of things which would never fly. And I'm not saying that people should get into fistfights at work, but you know what? I do think that those guys really did hash out their argument. I think they
Solved
did.
it right there and there. Yeah.
They did. Yep, that argument got solved.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting that the literal physical fight. Because I feel now you can't even like say something that's bad, but back then you could even like get away with being physical. But just the fact of saying something that's bad will be enough to like completely get you kicked out of work, I reckon.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
like there are certain things are verboten, you really can't I mean, it's not that you can't say things, but it is that you run the risk of putting yourself in a situation where I think people who are very uncharitable would read into your feedback as much deeper and more negative and hurtful or hateful or whatever than it actually is. And I think you see, especially this last year, with a lot of the games that have been coming out and their reception and how poorly they've done. A lot of these games have come out because people are either afraid to speak their mind or suggest that these are somehow not the way the game should go, or the writing should go, or the topics that are being pushed in them. And it's it's become so delicate. People are so sensitive, and they're just so uncharitable, I think. I think a lot of people are very uncharitable to creative opinions, and really the best way to get a creative process like a video game is sometimes hundreds of people all trying to work together to create something awesome. And that collaborative artistic endeavor is much harder to do when you have to sort of tiptoe around certain topics or something, because you don't know who's going to take what offense and what that means, and the fallout from it. And people have families and jobs, like no one wants to lose their job because they suggested, hey, this is not the way we should go. We should do something different. And then somebody is very uncharitable to that, and they think that you're somehow, some terrible person for bringing it up.
yeah. This reminds me of like the first movie Star Wars, where Grand Moff Tarkin says, "Oh, the fear will keep the local systems in check." It's like I feel like they're really pushing like fear onto people.
Yeah, yeah, they are, and that creates environments that are really not they're just not productive environments. They're not conducive to making the best stuff. And yeah, and we see the fruits of it. By their fruits you shall know them, and we are seeing them.
Yeah, you said you got a job at Activision. Now, how many years into your career did you land that job at that studio?
Zero, negative. I was an intern.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I applied. I was a senior in college. I was working on my portfolio and trying to balance classes in these things. And my college was right next to Activision Publishing, and they had an internship program. They were looking for 4 interns, and myself, my roommate, and 2 other guys in my class were the only 4 people who showed up. So we were the 4 guys who got the
Wow.
internships, and
Wow.
yeah, we just showed up to the day that we were supposed to go in there. We went in, we introduced ourselves, we did a little, basically a little interview, and then they're like, "All right, show up tomorrow," and that's kind of how it started. And we didn't have like mandatory hours that we had to work in the internship, but I know my roommate and myself, we worked 40-hour weeks for free as interns. Like we showed up every day at 9, 10 in the morning, and we worked all day amongst the team. We were kind of sectioned off in the back, but we were still there in the building. We could walk up and down the building or ride a scooter through the hallway, and we could go see any department and talk to anybody. It was an incredible experience, and they sat us in the back, and they basically gave us the very basic gist of what they wanted us to do and how they wanted us to help the team. And we basically were taking outsource art assets and making sure that they had bottoms to them, because like back in the day, before real-time physics and these things, you would save polygon count by just not having the bottoms of stuff like tables, chairs, table legs, things like that. Anything that would never be knocked over, since the technology, you couldn't knock things over really. You'd save poly count by just not having the bottoms of stuff. But when the generation switched over, and I think this was Xbox 360. I think we were putting Call of Duty 3 on Xbox 360, and it had real-time physics for, objects could be knocked over. You could shoot the lamps off tables and things like that. So we had to go through all of these assets and make sure they had, capped bottoms, there were no open faces, so the player wouldn't see through the model, because they weren't doing double-sided rendering to save bandwidth. So we had to go through all of these assets to make sure that they were good, make sure they were named right, make sure the textures were named correctly, and then put them in kind of like a hopper for the world builders. So they would go in and they would update the models in the engine. We didn't have access to the engine, but we had all the models coming in, make sure they're named right, fix them all, re-UV'd stuff, and then put them in the video game.
Wow. I can't believe you said they needed 4 people and only you 4 showed up. Now it would be like hundreds of people trying to get it. Maybe even thousands from like where
Yeah,
you are.
maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, probably. The thing though is, it was like an open call. It was like basically just show up, just show up. And we were the only students we were the only people who showed up. I think it was 4 students. And yeah, we went over there and we just said what's up, and it was just 4 of us. I think that the Activision guys were also a little disappointed that we were the only 4 that showed up. I think that they were expecting more interest in it, and it blew my mind really. And that's when I realized, most people at video game college are not most people that I was going to college with were not very serious about doing what it took to get in the industry. To their own detriment, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But we were ready to go. Like, I was working 40 hours a week for free at Activision and going to college and trying to finish my portfolio and trying to prepare to graduate and do all of that stuff, and basically eating like eggs and rice every day because I had no money as I was, a kid. and it worked out. It worked out. I got at the end of like a three. It was like 3 or 4 months of being an intern, and they offered me a job. And that's how I got into the industry.
Well, that you definitely deserved it. That's for sure. But that just blows my
Cheers. Thank
mind.
you.
Just how it was back then. Like it's absolutely crazy how bad it is now compared to back then.
Yeah, it is wild. Like it has become like art schools that do the game art program have definitely become kind of like fast food colleges. They're like Mick Art College where you get this nonsensical degree that says like, oh, I have a bachelor's in science, game art, media, or whatever. And I don't know. I just think it's so strange. And it doesn't really it doesn't do a service to these kids either. I think it's actually very predatory. But to get there. So I grew up in New York City, and I moved the summer I turned 18. I graduated high school, turned 18, and then by September I had moved all the way to Los Angeles, California, and I was a student at an art school in LA that was a multimedia animation school that was doing a game program. And as a young man, I had no idea about these things. I was just some kid from New York. My parents had no idea about this stuff. I had no real direction outside of I wanted to make video games. Like I love video games. I want to make video games. How do I do it? I go to the art school that's in LA because that's where the video games get made. That's all my thought process was. And I went there. I tried to do as best I could. I really, originally, I wanted to be a concept artist. And because I was really into comics in the 90s. I used to draw comic books. I was into like first wave anime that came to the United States, like all that Ninja Scroll and Akira and all that stuff. And I loved comic books and anime. And I moved to LA and realized, oh my God, everybody here wants to do exactly what I want to do. All they want to do is draw. Anime is not, none of them are making anime, for one. No jobs want an anime artist. No jobs want a comic book artist. So if I'm going to get into this industry, I need to figure out something that the industry needs. And then I discovered how to use 3D Studio Max, and I
Oh,
learned how to model. And I just picked it up. It just clicked for me, and I was like, okay, I can do this. Let's get good at it. And that's really it. I just made model after model for mods and small teams, and of course my classes and all these things. But I was doing a lot of online research. Like there were forums, online art forums called Polycount and 3D Total, and there were a couple other places, Slipgate Central, like that were based around like tutorials and like early tutorials and early modding Unreal Engine, and how to swap the characters out, how to make a character, like how to model joints so that they can actually animate, like how to rig it on top of something and so the animations work. That was all the stuff that I basically stumbled through in college, and then when I got into the industry itself, I at least had a little bit of experience from those mod teams, and I was able to just pick it up and get better and better, and as the years have gone by.
yeah. You said before, you spoke a little bit about colleges for like art degrees now, and that some of them can be, kind of not that good.
Mm.
But one thing I noticed though, like you're totally right. But one thing I noticed though is that a lot of people who are actually talented, they struggle themselves. Like even the talented people in our industry, like especially the junior talent, like the people who are like years ahead of everyone else, they're pretty much as good as a senior or mid. They're struggling. I've
Yeah,
heard many
yeah.
stories, like in my YouTube comments, many times where it's like, oh, I've been doing this for 3 4 years and nothing's landed. Like here's like my portfolio, and their portfolios look amazing, like for the amount of experience they have. But yeah, they're like, it's sad that it's come to like these times, because someone like them back in the glory times would have been seen as so valuable and probably like, would have done as well as what you have done.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely got in before a lot of junior positions became outsourced positions. I think that's one of the
Yeah,
reasons why young people have such a hard time getting into the industry is
yeah,
that,
that's true.
you know, yeah, like once upon a time, hiring a couple juniors was how you staffed up the studio. You it wasn't so immediately, oh, we'll just spin up an outsourced department and send this work overseas. Like that was not we still did that. Don't get me wrong. It still was a thing, but it wasn't like as prevalent as it once was. And I think it's tough for young people to find opportunities because most junior level positions are just outsourced now.
That's 100% true because
Mhm.
funny enough, I'm looking for a junior video editor, and so I put an ad on LinkedIn, um, and oh my, I was flooded with just applicants from overseas. Flooded. Like I think in total I've had like 50. And mind you, I only had the pay. I didn't even have the paid version of LinkedIn. I only used the free job posting. And what that does is, after you get a certain amount of applicants, it just straight up just cuts it off. It just like stops you
Oh
from
man.
taking any more. But if I was paying that $80 a day, like, and this is what these big studios do, and you look at these big studios with their jobs and it just says like over 100 applicants, but that's within like a couple hours, so you know they're getting thousands and thousands of applicants, and the majority of them are from overseas. So,
Yes. Yep.
and look, a lot of them are probably getting looked over. They're probably not even considering a lot of them. But if a company wants to save a crap ton of money and pay someone peanuts, I mean, that's the way to go. Like, and that you're right. I think that could be why juniors are struggling, because a lot of these companies are going with just cheaper overseas labor.
Yeah, or they're importing. Like,
Oh yeah,
I
true.
don't know how up you are on the or how up to date you are on American politics. It seems like everywhere you look, you can't get away from it. But one of the big things that's kind of a very I don't know, I guess big issue right now is the H-1B visa program. And so when you think of it, it's basically like these companies are incentivized to not hire Americans. They get someone from overseas for a lot less cost,
Or even
and the
free.
government subsidizes it. So the government is paying the company to essentially hire someone outside of the country, pay them less. Now you're getting paid essentially double less, like you're getting the government pays you to pay somebody less to not hire an American worker.
Wow.
And it's very prevalent. And you know, people want to throw around isms and words to people who point these things out, but I'm just not a big fan of essentially indentured servitude. Like I think, like, because these folks come over, it's a great opportunity. I don't blame anybody for wanting to come here and make video games. Don't even get me wrong. But the company is taking advantage of these people because they're paying them less, they're moving them here, and then they got them by the balls because they got their visa, and they can't just like change jobs in 6 months if they're like, oh, this is whack and I'm being exploited. Like they can't do that. They'll be removed from the country.
Yeah, we have the
So
exact same
essentially,
thing in Australia.
yeah,
Exact same thing.
yeah, it's terrible, and I don't like I said, I don't blame anybody from coming here. I don't even blame people who sneak in here. I don't blame you. Do what you got to do. Do what you got to do to live. I get it, but these companies are incentivized to essentially hurt all these kids coming out of college with their art degrees, and it's got to stop.
Yeah, we're completely powerless as well, as we don't have unions, we don't have anyone like, we don't even have proper communities. Well, that's what I'm hoping to do: build a community where we can talk about these problems. Because where else do you go to talk about issues in the game dev industry? Like, I don't know a single other place that you can go to and kind of, find people who talk about this stuff. Like, I don't know. We need to do
Yeah,
something
outside of
about it.
private private chats with, other developers who see the same thing, like outside of the privacy of those kind of group chats and stuff. You certainly won't find it on LinkedIn or any of the journalist sites. Like everybody wants to be, everyone wants to be the good boy. Nobody wants to be the person who rocks the boat or makes problems because this industry is so small.
Exactly.
Your reputation precedes you so much in this industry. You say a couple of the wrong things somewhere, and the wrong person gets upset, and now you've really damaged your chances at future job prospects and growth and these sorts of things. I think this is changing now that I do think it's slowly changing because of the absolute just destruction of the industry, like the constant just failed projects and wastes of hundreds of millions of dollars. I do think things are going to change for the better. But for the last 10 or so years, 10, 12 years, I see it happen all the time, man.
Yeah, I had an uncle talk to me, and I kind of explained like what I do and just about the industry and how bad it is. And he's like, "Don't you get worried that you're kind of like shooting yourself in the foot? That future employers might see what you do on YouTube or LinkedIn or whatever, and like they're not gonna want you." And I'm like, I responded with, I just feel like I have nothing to lose at this point. Like it's everything's already so dire, and even if I was like a good boy and just follows the rule, I'll probably not even with my experience, like I'm not a complete inexperienced person. I have almost 4 years of industry experience myself. But even at that point, it just feels like I'm basically back to square one. I feel just as not useless, but just as no, yeah, I feel just as useless as someone who has no experience at all. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It
yeah,
really
I do.
feels really, really bad. So someone's got to be a voice for it. So yeah, I'm happy that you reached out to me because we need more of this.
I agree, man. I really enjoyed a lot of your guys' takes, and I just enjoy the content, and I think it's got to be said. It's got to be said. I remember when it all started. Like I remember like 2008, 2009, things started getting whack. Like
Really, that early? Okay.
yeah, it was because if I remember correctly, you know what Gamergate is?
No, just give a quick explanation, just in case someone else
Gamergate
doesn't know
was
it.
this Gamergate was this nonsense that happened in like 2012 where it came out that someone found a list of all of the games journalists that were getting paid by basically getting paid by devs to give good reviews. And it got attacked by the usual suspects, telling everybody, "Oh, these are just a bunch of dudes who hate women, and they're the worst people on the internet." But and I'm sure hey, some of them probably were, but that doesn't change the fact that companies were paying journalists and journal outlets to give good reviews about games, and that's I think that that's wrong.
Well, that happened in 2012 because I know that's happening now.
Yeah, it's still
But
yeah,
yeah,
because it basically got crushed by overwhelming social pressure. Because at the time, calling people like women hater and all these other things like really worked. That really shut people up. People believed it. But now it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf. I think you can only throw these words around so much till they lose meaning, and now people just don't. I don't think really people give a shit anymore. I think it doesn't work.
yeah,
So it's sort of coming back around, and we're seeing how many outlets are failing now and laying people off because they've been giving great reviews to games that really don't deserve it. And the consumer base is so strained now. Like people don't have money in the United States right now. Like the economy is so bad that people just don't have money to spend on bad games that are really expensive, full of microtransactions, and don't offer them the escapist experience that they want from a video game. And the market's flooded with games. Like there are so many options.
Yeah.
that unless you actually make a really awesome game, you are not going to survive.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it happen.
Yeah, it's become like a meme. Like, you can take a really trash game, and then you'll see IGN 7 out of 10. It's funny too because the 7 out of 10, it's kind of like inferring that, oh, we'll pay you IGN. Don't give us like a 10 because that'll seem sus, but just give us something
Right.
that's
Yeah.
pretty good, and that way no one's suspicious.
Yeah.
But it's a complete meme. You see it everywhere. IGN just loves giving 7 out of 10s
Yeah.
for any game.
It's like the non-committal. It's not, don't want to look like I'm biased, so I'll give it a 7. Like, come on. It's rough. Yeah.
Yeah. And you spoke about the economy. Yeah, the economy is just, oh, it's trash everywhere. In Australia, it's trash. And yeah, in America, the economy's failing hard too. And yeah, it's very, very bad.
Yeah, I don't blame anybody who doesn't want to buy a $70 game and then get nickel and dimed for horse armor or silly looks like or even badass looks. Like back in the day, you would just kill monsters and get cool looks in the game you bought. You know, you just got them. You just got the armor because it was part of the game. Now everybody wants to do the paid game and then microtransactions, and I think people are just tired of it. Like I've worked on tons of live service games that are free games, and you pay for the game with the microtransactions, and I think that that's totally legit. I think that that's totally acceptable. And people understand it. People understand that it's a business and we need to keep the lights on if you want to get more of the game. If you want to keep this live service going, we need to make money somehow. And if the game's already free, I think people feel almost like they want to buy things because the game is free. And if they like it, they want to buy the cosmetics and the different things. But if you're already spending $60, $70 on the game, and it's full of microtransactions, I think people have just gotten sick of stuff like that.
Yeah, well, take FC 25. So you know what that is? That's like FIFA 25, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, my mates, we all played 24, which is the year before, and it was a fine game. Like from 23 to 24, it was a pretty nice upgrade. But once 25 came out, all my mates bought it, except for me, because I'm not paying bloody 110 Australian dollars on just. It looked like a reskin. Sorry, it didn't even look like a reskin. It looked like the exact same game. It was the exact same game, and I remember seeing my mates in the voice chat and the text chat saying, "Oh, this happened, this happened. The game's so broken. The AI is just so dumb and just so glitchy." And I'm like, I'll get it, but I'm gonna wait till this thing goes on sale. And 2 months after the game come out, 50% off, which is like unheard of. Usually it takes like half a year to a year for that to happen. But the game, they must be losing money, right? So they put it on half price. So I did get it, and it's still a bad experience, even at half price. I still don't even think it's worth it at its $50 price tag, just because of how broken and just how similar it is to the previous game,
Yeah, that's a real shame.
Yeah, that's what we're going to continue to see, like, in the following versions. And it's just sad because it's a game a year and it's just a cash cow at this point.
Yeah, and as technology has gotten better, I think the ability for the average consumer and even people in the industry, like, to discern the difference between back in the day, the generations were obvious. It was like, 16-bit, 32-bit, 64, 3D. Oh shit, the game's 3D now. And then the 3D got better, spec gloss workflow, and now it's like PBR workflow. Like, and now when things have gotten to this level of rendering and the fidelity is so high, I just don't think people actually see the difference between a lot of these games anymore. Like, no one notices that the characters are now 50,000 triangles instead of 20,000 triangles. Like, they don't really see, like, those differences are so small.
Yeah.
But they're not small on our end when we're making them. Doubling the triangle count and doubling the texture size, like that's like 2 extra weeks of work. That's a lot of work. So they have to recoup the money because we're spending all this time making high fidelity assets. That stuff doesn't just come out of thin air. But I don't think players see it. I don't think players see it. And if they do, I don't think they really care. They just want a fun game. They don't care if the models are higher fidelity. Like, I don't really think people care.
Yeah, not true. And you know who also doesn't notice the difference? Recruiters and stuff, especially those that aren't devs. You know, they're seeing all this
Yeah.
content, and they're just assuming making this content is so easy because they're seeing other people do it. You know, but they don't
Mhm.
realize this. Like, if especially if they see a character, a really high quality character, like some of the characters you've done, they're seeing the end result. They're not exactly seeing the process. And I know for a character that's that high quality, it can take possibly weeks because you got to do all the sculpting and the
Yeah.
topologizing and texturing. There's so many things, but they're not seeing that process. So they're just assuming, oh, look, this person did this and this person did this. This is easy. I understand art. It's easy. Why do I have to pay them? Why do they have to pay them for weeks when I'm seeing it right now? Can't this be done in a day or less?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's funny you mentioned this. I was having the same conversation earlier today with another colleague of mine, and he's doing freelance work, and he got this freelance gig, and the fidelity ask is crazy compared to the money that they're willing to the time and the money that they want to spend on the individual assets. And I just told them, like, you're either going to have to be okay with the money, or you're going to have to negotiate something greater. And if they're not willing, you really do have to walk away, because there's not going to be there's no real way to squeeze all of this stuff. Like, it's already like making characters, like you were saying, the characters that I made for this last Unreal 5 project that I was working on, it took about 5 to 6 weeks per character. That's just one character. And that's just the art side of it. That doesn't include rigging, that doesn't include animation, that doesn't include VFX, that doesn't include all the gameplay stuff that has to get hooked up on the back end. Just to make the one asset is 5 to 6 weeks of my time. And then now think about how many characters are in a video game. Now think how many skins come out in the different games that you play every battle pass patch or whatever. Then the numbers start making, they're like, that's why things are so expensive. That's why games take this long to do. Like, that's why all of this stuff has just gotten insane. And the costs have skyrocketed because, you can't get high quality, really high fidelity stuff for faster than a certain amount of time, like minimum. Like, and I'm not working 8-hour days all the time. Like, sometimes it's a 10-hour day, sometimes it's a 12-hour day. Like, every once in a while, like, I'll put in that extra time just to make it a little bit better, or just to, like, make myself feel better about, like, the piece of work that I'm doing. But there's no time you ever really do less than your 8 hours. You're already, like, really trying to squeeze as much into that time frame as possible. And then you got people behind you too. Like, the rigging and animation can't get final work done until the model is done. So I have people waiting on me to deliver this thing at a certain date, and every day later that it comes in, other people are getting behind, and everything's falling behind. And it's like that debt, that time debt builds up, and that's all money that people are getting paid, and that's all stuff that needs to be recouped by companies. And it's a balance. It's a delicate balance, and it often is kind of the destruction of projects.
Yeah. Have you ever had any experiences where you would pretty much finish a product and then you would deliver it, and then a little while later they'll ask for changes, even though it's been like approved, and then you'll have to make these changes, which kind of screw everything up.
Yeah, yeah, it happens a lot, actually.
Yeah, I know, because I've done some rigging. It's like the worst feeling ever when you make the character and then you rig it and you weight paint and it's like almost perfect, and then you deliver that and then someone will say, "Oh, the client wants these changes. Can you make him more muscly and or whatever it is, right? And you're just left like now you got to pretty much all that work is just undone, and it's hard work. And now you're like, and especially if you're getting paid per the gig, and it really sucks because then it's not like you get extra money for it unless you demand it, which is a thing that not enough people do. Like
Yeah, you
when
should demand it. You
yeah,
should.
100% should demand it, and that's something that I
Yeah.
learned. I've been burnt maybe twice now, but yeah, never will I let that happen again. Where a client just changes their mind and I'm not asking for more money. Like it's really
Yeah.
hard. Yeah.
Uh, One thing I'd say to that is when you agree to when you if you're this it happens a lot with contracts like freelance contracts. That happens a lot in my experience. But one thing I would say is if you're a freelancer and you want to avoid things like that in the contract that you give to whoever the client is, you you know say you spell it out for them. You're like, okay, I will do the first 5 days will be on say the high poly, and then I will give you two in the contract. You say there will be two revision cycles. So after the high poly, I'm budgeting in two revision cycles for you. We don't have to use both of them, but you get two. And after that, once you approve the high poly, we're not going backwards. You're going to get the low poly, and then I will and we could do one or two on that, and you get them to agree up front. You get them to agree to that up front and sign the legal document. And if you can, try to get half of your money up front too. Say like, I want half of the rate up front, and then when I get the second half, I will give you all the deliverables.
Yeah.
And
Plus one.
oftentimes people will leave. You will never hear from them again because they don't want to deal with that. They want to abuse you.
Yeah, that's the ultimate red flag. See, that's a great solution. Just another problem is that we're not told this, especially in art school or just in general, just in school in general. We're not told this. We need people to tell people this so it never happens, so we can prevent it versus fix it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. I completely agree. I don't know what gets taught in colleges anymore. It's been so long since I went to college. I've had the pleasure of speaking with students a number of times, and I love whenever I get the opportunity to talk to people who want to get into the industry or want to do something creative with their lives. And I want to answer as many questions as I can, but there's only so many topics and so many things to cover, and I don't have a master's degree, so that limits my options. Like if I wanted to go teach at a college, I have a limited ability to do that because I do not meet the requirements to be a professor at a accredited university.
Yeah. Well,
So
yeah. My
yeah,
brother taught a class. He didn't have like a PhD or whatever, a master's either, but they needed someone like the experience. That's when the experience kind of overwrote the education. But he's told me that the courses have gone soft now, so there's people who deserve to fail. Like there was at least
yeah,
five people who should have failed. They didn't. They either submitted assignments way too late, like way past the deadlines, or they were just so low quality and they didn't even follow the rubric or whatever they had to do.
yeah,
But they complained after he gave the fail marks, and guess what? Now they passed.
yeah.
So,
Oh yeah, that was happening when I went to college too.
oh, okay, so it's always
These
been a problem.
they're for-profit schools, man. They want if your money's green, you can show up. They don't care. They don't care if you get the degree and you never get a job as long as your check clears. That's all they care about. And certainly there are professors like your brother who really do who they believe in discipline. They believe in like being honest and real with students because that you're setting this person up to fail by lying to them, but you get reprimanded by people higher than you, and it goes over your head and they just pass and they go on and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yep.
Let's change the subject. So I want to talk about inconsistent pay rates. So how many jobs have you had? Like how many different companies have you worked for over the years?
I think nine. I think
Nine.
nine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was your pay always consistent, or did it fluctuate between different companies?
It fluctuated between different companies, and it also fluctuated between depending on the amount of responsibility. So when I was a junior in mid-level, it was pretty close. You know, my mid-level salary wasn't really that much better than my junior salary. But once I got into senior positions, then I started getting a more reasonable rate. And then when I became a lead, that's when I made the most money. My time as a art lead paid me the best, and then I actually took when I left different art lead positions, I would often either get a side grade rate, like I would just move to this for the same pay to a senior role with less responsibility, or sometimes I would take a pay hit moving from lead to senior.
I raised an ethical question. I kind of asked, like, imagine there's two jobs and they're two identical jobs. You're doing the exact same, let's say, characters. You're doing the exact same character work. If you're living in LA versus Wyoming, for example, to me, I would be jealous if I was working in Wyoming and I knew someone in LA, even though their expenses are higher, and if they were getting paid like double as much, I would get incredibly jealous. Like, I get why they do it. They're trying to account for the cost of living and stuff, but to me, that just gets me jealous. What are your thoughts on that? Like,
Well, I understand where you're coming from, but as someone who has done both of those things, I've had the big salary in the expensive place, and I've had the more reasonable salary in the less expensive place. I do not feel jealousy anymore. Have taken I have taken less money to move to places that are more aligned with, you know, what I want out of life. You know, I've made the big salary in San Francisco. I've made the big LA salary and the Seattle salary and all that stuff. And I think that the speed of life in different places, the culture in different places, the less expensive aspects are more valuable to me than another 20 grand, another 30 grand, you know?
yeah, I think people also might be more jealous of the experiences now versus pay itself. Because I feel
Yeah,
a
I
lot of
think if you've
people.
never done it, like if you've never lived in, you know, if you never went to LA and worked at a bunch of studios, you'll probably always have the mindset of like, oh, what would that be like? What would it be like to live there and to do that? And I understand. I was that guy. I went to do it there. You know, I moved to Texas to what's it going to be like to live in Austin, to live in Austin, Texas and make video games? What's it like to live in San Francisco and make video games there? I've done it all, so I'm in a position where I just don't care anymore. Like none of that stuff matters to me. But if I hadn't have done it, I probably would be really like champing at the bit to get the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a. Would you compare it to like drugs? Like, I've never taken drugs, but is it addicting? Like the just working in those like LA and stuff and having that experience, or is it something you're like over? You don't want to ever go back to it.
I don't think there's enough money in the world to get me to move back to California. That's for damn sure.
Okay,
But
yeah.
but like it's one of those things. Like it's not that I didn't enjoy it. There were incredible. Like I am who I am because I did those things and I had those experiences. You know, and I think I'm a more well-rounded, more mature person with a lot more experience and know-how and different perspectives on life because I did. So I don't regret any of it at all. But when I look at projects these days, what I want is something that actually speaks to me artistically and also as a it also comes across as a responsible endeavor. Like, are we making a really cool game? Are we wasting money? Do we have redundant management? Like, do people not know what they're doing? Do we have incompetent leadership and incompetent money skills and bad plan? Like, those are the things that I look for. I want to work with competent people on something that matters more so than, oh, I got to work on, I got to go to EA and like live in San Francisco and be like, rub elbows with, whoever. Like, I don't, that shit is over.
Yeah, the thing down in Melbourne is like people love ramen nights, ramen and soju, and I'm like, man, I can't be bothered doing that stuff. I just, like my brother hates ramen, but the amount of times he's been forced to like go to these restaurants and it's just so funny. Um, One thing I wanted to ask you, are you employed right now? Like, yeah, start with that first.
I was employed up until the end of this last year, and my company went through a huge downsize with everybody else this last year. So currently, I'm doing freelance work and working on an indie game.
Oh, sweet, your own indie game, or is that the freelance work?
Yeah, my business partner and I have started an indie project.
Oh, awesome. That's amazing. And how
Yeah.
much of your time is spent on the freelance part?
Well, I've had two freelance contracts come and go since October.
Okay.
So it really depends on how much work is coming in. If sometimes a month will go by and there's crickets, like right now, everybody's trying to get work. So it's really rough to find anything consistent. So I've been spending a lot of time doing indie game stuff, but January, February, new quarter is coming up. So I imagine there are going to be a lot more opportunities. So the indie game may take a back seat for freelance or studio opportunities. The future is not written, so I'm not sure what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's interesting that see, we were talking before about talented people. So you're a talented senior, and you're kind of like you've landed two freelance gigs, which is probably more than what an average person would land in the job market. But even you're like, I don't know if you'd call it struggling, but like whatever the
Well, I'm
thing
certain.
before that
Yeah, I
is.
certainly don't have I can't just show up and get a job. I've interviewed. I've had those two freelances. I've interviewed at three companies. I've done art tests. I've done a number of interviews, and I'm with everybody else. I'm with everybody else trying to get a gig right now because of just how bad the last year and a half, 2 years of the industry has been, and it's not going to get better either. Like 2025 is looking like another rough first, second quarter. Like I
Yeah.
think that we're going to see more flops, more closures, more layoffs. Like it's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the side of it's definitely going to get worse. But then you could argue, is it going to get better? See, I'm kind of like I'm on the fence. I don't know. I don't know if it will recover. It's one of those things that once it dies, I think it's just going to die. Um,
I don't think so.
you think
I don't
it'll
think so,
improve?
man.
Do you think it's
I
ever going to
think I
get back to
think
the glory days?
no, I don't think that we can go back. I think the idea of wouldn't it be great to go back is not going to happen. I do think though we're going to move into a new era. We're at the sunset of one, and we're about to be at the dawn of the next one. And the next 10 years of development are going to be very different than the last 10 years. And I think that's a good thing. Will it get worse before it gets better? Yes, I do think so. But we have to hope that the layoffs that have happened in the industry thus far are the seeds of the new studios and the new developers who hopefully will learn from the mistakes of their past studios and will try to avoid repeating them in this next cycle. So I am hopeful for the future. I think it may take a little while to get going, but I don't think entertainment is ever going to go away. I think people want escapism. People want cool games. They want to go on adventures, and they want to get their buddies together and shoot each other in the head, and go into dungeons and stuff. Like I just think that's never going to go away. So it might look different, studios may look different. Team sizes might be different. There might be more indie and double A projects coming out, but I think that's a good thing. I think indie games are amazing, and I think double A projects are really a much wiser solution to making games, because the triple A $400 million 7-year development cycle is absurd on its face. It's almost impossible to get that money back, and especially if you make some junk. Like, you've put hundreds of millions of dollars into garbage that most people at your company probably knew wasn't going to go well, but they weren't empowered to say anything because they were worried that if they said anything, they were the negative employee. Oh, they're negative, or they're, they're some kind of hater or something. We got to get rid of those people. We got to get them out of here. Like that. That's hopefully going to be gone in new, smaller studios, like where people will be a little more mindful and more open-minded to hearing like real feedback. But it all comes down to leadership, man. Like, everything is about leadership. If your leaders are incompetent, your studio and your project is going to fall apart. Because at the end of the day, the people in charge are the ones who make the decisions, and everybody else just has to be like, well, I don't really agree with this, but this is my job, and I've already voiced my opinion, so they're signing the checks. I'll make it the way they ask me to. But it's unfortunate because those people are the ones who get laid off and lose their jobs, and rarely do the leaders ever really feel any real repercussions based on their bad decision making.
Yeah, incompetence and arrogance are like a deadly combination. Like,
Yeah.
you'd be better off with just incompetence, because if they hire the right people and kind of let them do their thing, it might be okay. But especially when you mix the arrogance and they're making the bad decisions, and it's just, you're you don't want to say anything because you'll lose your job. But if you don't say anything, you'll lose your job. So you're stuck in like this limbo of like, what the heck do you do? That's
You generally speaking, what I've seen is people they just don't say anything, and they ride it out, because if you say something up front, then you lose your job now. If you don't say anything and you ride it out, you lose your job when the game fails.
Yeah. And you'd probably rather that one, because at least you get paid more. So
yeah, because at least, a lot of these places, if they haven't just completely emptied the coffer, you get you get like some severance package and stuff, and you get a little bit of time to reflect and gather yourself up, which is a blessing for any company that gives you that kind of way out situation, whatever you want to call it. But it's unfortunate because it doesn't have to be that way. Like, nobody really has to get let go if you just made good decisions. Like, unless the game was just actually really bad and it had no audience or anything, but I don't think it has to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. Studios hire people with tons of experience who are gamers, who love video games, and then they do not listen to them. They want the best of the best. They want to hire only the people with the most experience and the most talent and all of these things, and then they get them, and then they don't want to listen to anything they have to say. It's bizarre. It's such a strange thing. But like you said, that arrogance, like, it's a lack of humility. Like, I would think if I were hiring people and I find a experienced animator, experienced technical director or something, I would defer to that person on grounds of technical things, on grounds of animation things. Like, I have my opinions, like all of us do, but I am not an expert animator. I'm not an expert tech director. I hired you to do that. So if I'm doing something dumb, I expect you to stand up to me and say, like, I see where you're coming from, but I think we should handle it this way. But oftentimes when you do that, you just get yourself, removed from the company. Yeah, I've experienced it myself when I was a lead. I've come into projects, I've seen how things are going, and I've reorganized how I think things should be done, and I've presented it to my superiors, and they tell me no.
Wow.
You know, they're like, no, we're not doing that. You know, you do it this way. I'm like, well, the way you've laid it out here is going to end in this certain result. And they don't, you know, instead of being
Denial.
humble and reflecting and going, oh, well, this, you know, this expert that we hired and are paying a large sum of money is telling us that we're not going to get the result we want unless we do it a different way. They don't they're just like, no, this guy's negative. He's not a team player. It happens all the time. It's insane. It's absolutely crazy.
Sheesh. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
absolutely brutal. All right, let's move on. So I want to talk about let's talk about character modeling. But what I want to talk about is back when I was in art school, in the character modeling class I had, the teacher made us do a little introduction. Like one person goes to the front of the class and kind of explains what they want to do in their dreams. So I reckon about 70% of students said they wanted to be a character modeler, right? And at the time, I'm like, why do you want to be a character modeler? Because I had a little bit of experience at that time making characters, and it's so much work. It's like probably the hardest modeling job, honestly.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it is.
because it's like when you start sculpting, you just feel like a dummy. Like I know it takes thousands and thousands of hours even just to like become competent in it. And yeah, I'm just seeing all these people saying, "Oh, I want to be a character model," and they're so enthusiastic about it, really, really enthusiastic. And I'm just thinking to myself, yeah, like I'm not going to do this because if everyone else is doing it, I have no chance of getting a job. And it's not something that really interested me personally. I'm more of a props guy and whatever. But I wanted to ask you, how long? See, I said 1,000 hours. How long do you think it took you to become like skillful in what you do?
Oh man, I'm still getting better. Like I'm getting better with every piece that I do, and I'm learning something. I'm learning something every time I make a new model, man. Like I'm still not where I want to be. Like I have aspirations of being even better and better and better. And like I feel like when you get to the point where you think you can't actually improve, like you're doing a disservice to yourself. Like for one, you're probably delusional because there's always somebody better than you. There's always something new to learn. Technology is always changing. You know, you got to humble yourself and remember, like you got to put your reps in no matter what you're doing. But damn, man, I don't know. Like it's tough to say because when I got my first job, I wouldn't have hired me. Remember, like looking back in my mind, because I don't have any of that stuff anymore. Like it's from ages ago. But I remember my portfolio from college was not great. Like it really was not. It was not great.
Would you?
And
Sorry,
I
I'm just gonna jump in quickly. Would you
sure.
believe that my first job, I didn't even have a portfolio. It
That's
was
awesome.
it was a word. It was even worse. It was a Word document with like screenshots of like really horrible screenshots of like models and stuff. And oh my god, we thought in Maya where you can like turn the wireframe on. It wasn't even
Yeah.
like properly rendered. But yeah, I didn't even. Yeah. Anyway, carry on.
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah, no, I mean, hey, whatever gets you the job, like that's really what's important is you got in there and you got the experience and you got paid. That's what's important. But yeah, my first portfolio was whack. Like it was okay. Like it was mostly RTS resolution stuff. So we're talking 2005, 2004, 2005 when I was working on it. If you think about what was coming out then, what came out World of Warcraft came out in 2004. And I was a Blizzard, like a diehard Blizzard fanboy. So a lot of the art in my portfolio at the time was aimed at like Warcraft 3, World of Warcraft resolution stuff, which was already low res compared to the rest of the industry at the time. You know, like we were moving into normal maps. Like I remember I got a copy of ZBrush in 2004 or 2005, and I didn't know anything about using it. I was just all thumbs. I was still focused on just making a clean model and making good UVs and making clean hand-painted textures. And then the technology switched over from everything being flat lit, diffuse textures to normal maps with spec gloss, and I was barely at the point where I liked my flat, diffused, textured models, and now I had to learn all of this other stuff just to apply to other places. And I was really fortunate, that I got in as an intern, and then I started making props and little things here and there, which allowed me to kind of get paid and work on this stuff. But even still, like, I didn't even really know how to do a lot of that, because even back then, a lot of realistic games are 3D scans. Most of the stuff that if you look at a really realistic game, most of that stuff is scanned. They'll put clothing on a mannequin, stick it in like a what essentially looks like a motion capture situation, and then they'll scan the clothing and kind of clean it up a little bit, and then send it to you, the artist, and then now you have this really high poly mess of a realistic scan, and then you try to make a clean model out of it. So I wasn't even really getting to sculpt and actually create art for the first 3 years of my actual job. Like, I was not really even making what I would consider art. And it wasn't until I got a job on a MMORPG called Warhammer Online. I went out to this studio called Mythic Entertainment. They were the studio that made Dark Age of Camelot. And we were working on Warhammer Online, and since it was an MMO on an old engine, they had not moved into the more modern times of using normal maps. So I went from making normal mapped games back a step, back in time, one generation, and I worked on an MMO, and really got my painting chops up. And I learned an unreal amount of just everything about development working on that game. But I didn't even focus on ZBrush. I didn't even focus on sculpting. And it was only like maybe 4 years after that I had been making high poly models in my spare time while working, that I was able to make art that was good enough to get me a job doing high poly handmade, high poly sculpted stuff. So I kind of did a little bit of a zigzag there. Mostly because I just didn't feel like I was an artist, with the resurfacing scans and stuff, and making like photoreal art with, photogrammetry, and, we take pictures of we'd scan the genes and then take pictures of them, and then I'd take a chunk of the picture and texture it with the pictures of the clothes, and I was like, this is not art. Like, this isn't really what I wanted to do. So, I just kind of followed my more I just sort of followed my ego, I guess, because I was young. I was hungry. I was like, I gotta go do this. I kind of, like you were talking earlier, like the people who really want to go out to LA to work on that project, or want to live in LA, or want to go to wherever and work on things. Like, I was of that mindset. I was have gun, will travel. I just want to make games that I'm interested in. And, regardless of the technology level. And it, did it bite me in the ass? Maybe in some ways, but I don't really think so, because it got me where I'm at now. But it took probably like 5 or 6 years of being like a full-time professional before I was making stuff in the current generation that was like good enough to get hired.
Wow. Do you have any like general advice for more junior artists? Like, just in general, like, I know we've kind of basically done that throughout the video, I guess, but is there anything that you would like to add yourself? Yeah.
Junior artists, like, don't get discouraged. If you really love it and you're good at it, time and perseverance will create opportunities. You just have to really keep creating pieces, create full pieces. Like if you're an environment artist, make a full environment and then take a bunch of really nice pictures of it, do as much of it as possible, finish the piece, put it online, take a little break, and then start another. If you make props, finish the prop. It's very easy to just do like, oh, here's my speed sculpt of this bust, and then you never resurface it, you never texture it, it's always just like this cool sculpture. There's value there, but people want to see finished assets. And going through the entire process will get you used to, excuse me, I think someone's honking the horn outside.
Yeah, I can hear that a little bit.
My bad.
No, it's all good. He's just agreeing
Go
with
through
you.
the whole process. Like, make the high poly, make the low poly, make clean UVs, bake it, texture it, light it, render, make it look real nice, and go through the whole thing. Unfinished work is always unfinished. Like it never helps, I don't think, to just have like unfinished pieces, because you're gonna learn weird intricacies about the process every time you do it. Because sometimes you run into like weird problems and you're like, oh, I never really built this thing and I've never really resurfaced something quite like this. How do I handle this? Oh, I've got an issue now. Like, oh, I'm seeing weird normal burns. Like, why is that? You're going to have to problem solve. And the more you problem solve and the more you run into issues and are able to overcome those issues and create a final piece of art, the more well-rounded you are going to be and the more knowledgeable you're going to be. So when you get into a studio, you are going to be, running at the same speed as a lot of people. Even if you've never worked anywhere, if you come into the studio and you just make real clean models with great topology, your bakes look good, everything's great, it's named right, you actually spent the time to like name things in a way that makes sense, you're going to be able to pick up what the naming convention is at your company. You're going to be able to pick up how things get implemented, how to make them look good, how to bake stuff. All of these things are really, there's no fast way of doing it. You just have to put your reps in. I said this to a guy the other day. It was just, it's kind of like going to the gym. Like, you don't go to the gym and do one bench press and get a huge chest. It just doesn't happen. You go in and you do hundreds of bench presses over years, and then you get the huge chest. It's the same thing with everything else. You just have to put reps in and keep at it and just keep throwing your portfolio out there. Make a new piece of art, apply to a bunch of jobs, start on the next piece of art, finish it, put it up there in your portfolio, apply to a bunch of jobs again. That's the only real way to do it, I think. And don't get discouraged. Don't get discouraged if you really believe in it and you really want to do it. It's a matter of being prepared and lucky at the same time. Like, opportunities arise at really funny times in really funny ways, and you just have to be prepared to jump on the opportunity when it shows itself.
Yeah. I think what I could add to that is be proud of your work. I remember my first model,
Yeah.
I made a mallet, and it was a rectangle and another rectangle handle, and it was beveled, and I didn't even texture or UV or nothing. I just put like two separate materials on each piece, and I was so proud of that. And then I look at other people's work who are more experienced, and I'm like, oh, okay. Even if you're just starting, just be proud of your stuff. Like, you're growing. Don't, people like to rush the journey, but be proud of your stuff and have fun along the way if you can.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. Like, you just look at if you work for 2 years on personal art and you create something that you just made, go back and look at the old stuff and be like, damn, I've improved. You should be able to see it. Mm-hmm. You should be able to see it. Like, and it's almost impossible not to, because if you've been actively trying to get better, studying models, studying games, gathering reference, learning different techniques, it's almost impossible to not improve.
Yeah, no, exactly. And another thing, I'm really happy that you're actually working on an indie game yourself, because a lot of times I get people talking to me about like their modeling and just saying that, they get bored and stuff. What I thought that, like, I used to happen to me too, but what solved the problem was actually implementing your models in games. So if you make something like a cupboard, um, like make it so you put in your game engine, make it so you can open and close it. Like that
Mhm.
shit just it gives so much more meaning to your models, and plus it actually looks better on the portfolio than just having like a stationary thing. Like, um, of course, have the stationary model so people can see how you've made it. But if you can include a video of like showing that you can implement this and it looks great, then that's going to help so much. It's going to make you feel so much better. It gives your models an extra purpose.
Yeah. And you never know, you may actually enjoy the scripting and implementation part more than the modeling.
Yep.
And you never would have known that if you'd never done it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then you just put together scripting, coding, you become a programmer, scripter, game designer, technical artist. Like there's not just one job, there's not just modeler or animator. There are so many jobs that do not get the immediate highlight that when you think of like, oh, well, I'm in playing this video game. So someone made this move and someone made the thing and someone made the environment. Well, yeah. And somebody made all the VFX and somebody made all the shaders that all these artists use. And somebody made the rigs and all of the different interactables. And someone scripted how these things work and put them all together. And, there's so many jobs. Like there's a lot of jobs, especially you work on bigger games. Like there are a lot of moving parts, and you learn a respect for that when you start building it yourself. You're like, oh man, I want to build, like my friend, my business partner and I were doing like a little adventure game, a third person adventure game, and we're thinking like, okay, well, how do we make this work? Like how do we do a ledge grab? We don't just animate it. Like how do we actually make the character controller identify that there's a ledge here, and then play that, grab the ledge, play the animation, move the entity up onto the ledge, create a curve for the camera so the camera moves, in a natural fashion so that the character climbs up over the ledge and then looks good doing it, and it isn't jarring and weird, and then what are the units? What's the minimum and the maximum? Like what's the maximum height? What's the minimum height? Like, all of these things that go into the game development are the fun of it. It's the fun of making games, and it's never been easier. I'm gonna say easier. Easy is probably the wrong word, but it's never been more accessible for anybody to just download Unity and download Udemy tutorials and download YouTube. Like just go on YouTube.
Yeah.
How do I make a door open in Unity? It's like you're gonna get 8 videos of all different people just explaining multiple different ways of how to do it. Just follow tutorials, just learn it. And the more you learn, the more you know, and the more valuable you are to employers. Or you get really good and you can be the employer. Like there's nothing that says that you have to go work for somebody. Like look at that Balatro game that just came out. That dude who made Balatro made that game to try to get a job in video games. And what actually happened was he made one of the most successful indie games like ever. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, no, that's awesome. Great advice. Okay, we'll end on this. There's one more topic I really want to discuss. Is
Sure.
the question? Well, the topic is like, how else could we improve the games industry? So like, what I'm thinking is you can do it on a low level, which is like start your own studio and employ some people, all right, and you can kind of like help a couple people out. But what can we do on the grand scheme of things to actually help the industry out? Like, this is probably a really hard question, Patrick, because this probably takes days and days of thought. But do you have anything that jumps to mind with like how we could improve the industry as a whole on a grand level?
vote with your wallet, you know?
True.
I think I think what's happening right now in the industry, as I do not want to celebrate anybody losing their job. I don't want to celebrate anything failing. It's terrible. I don't have a job right now because people have voted for with their wallet. Many of my colleagues and friends and people I respect very much don't have work right now because the projects that they were working on failed because they did not focus on what the players wanted. And we're in a spot now where people are actually, they're not going to just throw the money around and then be okay with a bad product. Like, people are getting more discerning because they don't have the extra cash to throw around. I think if the game is not good, don't buy it. You know, like you were saying with that FIFA, you know, wait for it to go on sale and give it a shot. That's the only way these big companies understand. The only thing they understand is money. They really only understand money. Even when they push social nonsense or opinions or political angles, they only do it because they think that there's money in it. That's all. They don't care about people. They don't care about people. They don't care about social issues. They don't give a shit. They care about making money. So games will be made if the companies think that they can make money off of them. And when the games don't make money, that is the only language the industry as a whole understands. So if outside of simply becoming a great artist, becoming a well-rounded individual, you know, growing as a person and, trying to just make your own individual life better and make yourself like a good option to be hired. Don't support games that are bad or have predatory monetization. You know, like if the game comes out and it's full of monetization, don't buy it. Don't buy those. Don't interact with the store. You know, don't starve the companies of what they need the most, which is money, and that is what will get them to listen. I think that's really the only way to do it. And then, like you were saying, making indie games, make yourself really, really valuable. Get involved with indie projects. Get involved with small projects. Do some freelance here and there. Always be sharpening your knife. It's super important. But when you do get the opportunity to get in there, try not to repeat these mistakes. Try to learn from the past. There's like an old adage, like those who do not learn the past are doomed to repeat it. And I think that that's so true. Like everything is cyclical. This idea that, somehow we started one place and are just constantly like moving in some upright direction. Like this idea that this is its constant forward, upward movement is not real. That's a delusion. Everything happens in cycles. The last time the industry was this bad was in the 08, 09 recession, 12, 15 years ago. A lot of layoffs, a lot of studio closures. It was bad. And before that, there was the dot-com burst. Like these things happen. Like everything happens in cycles. If you want to fix the future, you look back on the past, you evaluate it, you get rid of the bad and you keep the good, and you try to not make the same mistakes the last people did, and you just try to make as many good decisions as possible as long as you can. But know that even that will ultimately end in probably another industry bust in 10, 15 years from now.
Yeah.
Like it's going to happen, always keep, and just accept it. Just accept that that's reality. And you get your portfolio together, get your experience together, always have some savings in the bank, and prepare for these things and just do your best. That's all anybody can do. They can just do their best,
Yeah. sometimes you can even fail from success. Like there was this building where I'm from in Melbourne called the Arcade, and it used to be home to like a lot of indie studios, all the
Mhm.
bigger indie studios, the ones that had like could afford the rent and like probably like at least 10 employees each. All these companies made at least one game that popped off, especially on mobile. But just over time, they haven't been able to replicate their success, and they've just been reinvesting all that money, and now the place is closed down. The
Mm.
place no longer exists anymore. So yeah, so sometimes even having success can lead to their failure. It's a
Oh,
brutal
absolutely.
world we live in.
Yeah, it's true. I've worked on successful games and at the same company, the next game that we made with many of the same people didn't succeed. Why did that happen? Why was one thing a success and another not? It's an entertainment. There's no like formula. It's not a math problem. Like you can't just plug in numbers and get a result and it's going to be good. You have to create something. You have to know your audience. You have to target an audience. You have to be aware of the zeitgeist at the time. You need to be aware of what's happening in the industry, how people feel about things, where there's opportunities, where there's needs for things. If there's a ton of adventure games coming out, don't make an adventure game. Make a game that isn't being made, and make it targeted at a group of people who love it. Love that whatever the whole is. Like, so say everyone's making adventure games. Okay, well, I'm going to make a puzzle game, and it's going to be based off of my love for these other puzzle games that really inspired me, and I want to put my own twist on it. And I know the demographic that I want to aim it at, and just go into it making a game not just for yourself but also for a certain audience. Like, give the audience what they want, and give them stuff they don't even know that they want. Like, if you're able to do that, if you're able to give the audience both what they want and the stuff they didn't know that they wanted but it's awesome, they'll love you for it. They'll absolutely love you for it. They'll throw money at you. I think that people are so starved for like really great products. Like, if you look back at this last year, I think that there was some stat out there that said like indie games have surpassed the indie games made more money and had more playtime on like Steam than ever before. They blew past AAA titles. People are tired of like you said, getting the same game over and over again with like barely a change, or getting games that like they felt weren't even made for them. They're like, who are you making this game for? It's certainly not me. I mean, I've been loving this type of game forever, but this, at a certain point, like you may not even feel like you're the target demographic for stuff anymore. So
Yeah.
go and make it, make that stuff, make the game for you and for your little niche in the world. Like, look at Space Marine 2 that just came out. Space Marine 2 is like, for a Warhammer 40K fan like myself, like a huge 40K nerd, playing that game was like everything I want in a 40K game. They knew their demo. They knew their market. They made like an incredible piece of art that made you feel like you were in the Warhammer universe. And you don't necessarily need millions of dollars to do it. You can make that feeling. You could get that feeling out of people with a much humbler budget on a smaller scale, and charge a couple bucks for it, and people will love it. Look at Binding of Isaac, right? Are you familiar with Binding of Isaac?
I haven't personally played it myself, but yeah, I've seen
Yeah,
some stuff on it.
Binding of Isaac is basically like the original Nintendo Zelda, just turned into a twin stick shooter, and I think it was sold for $5. And then it did so well, they added a expansion which like basically doubled the content of the game for another $3. And the two dudes who made that are multimillionaires now. Like, they had already done well with their previous games, but that game just blew up in popularity and people loved it. Is that Edmund McMillan, I believe, is the guy who made it. He's the Super Meat Boy guy.
Ah, yes.
Um, yeah, like people, I don't think people even realized that they wanted that game until it came out and they loved it. There's an indie developer who took Zelda, the Super Nintendo Zelda, the Dungeons of Infinity. He basically recreated the Super Nintendo Zelda game and made it into kind of like a roguelike. Thousands and thousands of people downloaded and played that game. I don't think he can make any money from it because it's a Nintendo product, but I think he used that popularity and the fact that it did do so well, and he had to learn so much to make it. And I think now he's making his own game. And I mean, there's so many different ways of doing it and so many platforms you could put these things on. And I do believe there's still money out there for good projects if people want to pitch to publishers or publishers or even just get independent funding. I think it's possible because there's never going to be a time where people don't want to play fun games, and it's just a matter of making a fun game, figuring out what it is you want, making a budget and a time frame that makes sense for the people that you have, and just sticking to it. I think sticking to it is the hardest part, because these are years and years long endeavors. You're going to have a lot of dark nights of the soul. Like, am I wasting my time? What the hell am I doing? Like, this is a waste. Like, what am I doing? And then you got to just plow through that stuff. Like, it's natural to feel that way. But if you believe in what you're doing, you can't listen to all of those chittering demons in your ears. Like, that's all in the way. You just got to power through it and finish the product and then see what happens, because an unfinished product, you're never going to sell it, right?
Yeah.
If you never finish the game, you ain't ever selling anything. So it's already over. So you may as well finish the damn thing and then see what happens.
Yeah, I know so many devs who just do not finish their projects, and they've spent like 5 years working on it and they just never release it. They're never happy with it. That's the problem. They're never satisfied with it. So if they're never satisfied, they'll never release it, and then it's just going to get lost. But yeah.
We're our own worst enemies, man, when it comes to these sorts of things, with whatever you're doing. I think like perfect is the enemy of good, and things just need to be good. Yeah. They don't need to be perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. Perfect is an illusion. It's a complete just distraction from just getting things done in the time frame, in the budget. Do as best you can in the time you have, and be okay with it. Just be okay with it. Like you said earlier, be proud of your work. Like, you had 5 days to do this prop. Do the best 5-day prop that you can, and then move on.
Yeah.
You're going to make 1 million more. Like, there's never going to be an end to the needs for projects and props and environments and character. Like, it's going to go on until you want it to stop, really. So you can be making 1 million more. I've made hundreds of characters. Like, in 20 years in this industry, I've made hundreds of characters and hundreds of props. I can't tell you how many times I've made like the same sword or the same gun, or I'm making a scythe again, or like I've made these things so many times. You just got to enjoy it. You got to enjoy the process. You got to just enjoy, like, cool, I get to make a sword again. Cool, I get to make I get to make another, set of shoes, or cool boots, or a sweet belt buckle, or shoulder pads. Like, you just make the best of whatever it is that you're doing at the time. And if you're not enjoying doing that, then maybe it's not for you. Like, maybe if you don't enjoy just the day-to-day of like pushing the verts around and solving the problem, like, why is the bake error, like, why is this not baking right, or like, why does it look bad in this lighting, or if you're not enjoying that process of like figuring it out and making it look good and getting it in there, you're not going to enjoy working at a studio. Because, if you're not even enjoying that part, you're definitely not going to like it when you got a guy like me who's telling you, all right, we need you to change this, or, you only have a certain amount of time to get it done. director comes back, he wants some changes, this guy wants some changes, you're on the clock, it's people are waiting for it, people, animation needs it, someone needs to rig it, we got to put it in the game and get it out there in front of people. Like all that extra pressure on top of not enjoying the process is you're going to be miserable. You're not going to enjoy it. So just have fun with making cool things. And that's, I think, really just enjoy it, man. Just enjoy the process. Don't get all wrapped up in everything else. Because I know people who, I think there's this terrible habit, or I don't know, habit, no, that's the wrong word. There's a terrible trend of people who are miserable making games. And I think if you are not having fun on the day-to-day individual things, that's a sign from God that you should be doing something else. Not because you're bad at it, not because you're a bad artist or you can't cut it or anything. It has nothing to do with that. If you are not enjoying yourself, why put yourself through it? Why spend 40 hours a week doing something you don't enjoy? Because there is something out there that you enjoy. Go find out what it is and do that. You'll be much happier in life if you enjoy what you're doing.
This reminds me. You said before the word niche, and that's the perfect word. You have to find your niche, but there's also examples of like finding the wrong niche. Like, are you familiar with a game called Spectre Divide?
Yes. One of my best friends, is the character lead on that project.
Oh my God. Okay. Okay, I might be talking a little shit here, but I hate.
Fine. Hey, everyone's allowed to have their opinion. Talk some shit to me. I love to hear it.
I hate the characters in that game. They are the most ugly, disgusting characters possible, right? And they know it too, because when you go to their cosmetic shops, what's the one thing you can buy? Oh, a helmet. And that what? What does that helmet hide? Oh, the ugly ass face.
The ugly face.
That's one of those things that's a bad experience. Like if your best friend was to lose that job, is he going to put that on his portfolio? Because I would probably not if I were him.
I don't know. I'm gonna take a little look. I'm gonna take a look at see if his portfolio is even up there. I don't think he's got. Oh, he's not on Earth. All right. Well, I couldn't tell you if it actually was.
What are the chances your best friend is the character lead?
I would say best friend. He's a really good friend of mine. I've known him for ages. And I know he went over there, and they had already been working on the game for a while. So I think he inherited that art style and that process. But yeah, it has a. I will say, at least they're trying something that's not just a realistic soldier. I will say, at least they're trying something. But yeah, like if everyone has their tastes, and I don't know exactly how. I don't know how I feel about that game. I think they're trying, but it's got a weird look to it. It's almost like they have realistic stuff, and then they put a weird shader on it, and sometimes it looks good, and sometimes it's not so good.
Well, the biggest problem is the environments. I actually think the environments are great. With the people who did the environments, like that's top-notch work. But the problem is you've got the characters and the gun models. They have that shader, but they're flat shaded, but the environment's textured.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. I like I do like the environments. It's got kind of like a
you can tell
what is that? What is the riot shooter?
Yeah, it's got.
Is that riot?
Yeah, it's
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I think there's a little delay, so we're kind of talking over each other.
Yeah, but I just want to say, you can tell the maps, they look like they've been used before, which is good. It makes you feel like, oh yeah, people have played on this before. It's like they have wear and tear, and the wear and tear is like really, really good. But then you've got these gun models which look flat shaded, which they don't have any marks or scratches. They look pristine, but not a good pristine. They don't look good. But that's so funny that your best friend is the lead character artist, because I made a whole video on my YouTube basically talking about how the game's a failure, but no one seems to be talking about it. People on YouTube, when they talk about why Spectre Divide's failing, they'll be like, oh, the gunplay just feels a little whack. Oh, there's cheaters. But no, the real reason is the game's ugly. Like, the characters are ugly. Yeah. No one wants to play as those ugly characters. Let's just put it straight like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting sometimes how different games people will be more or less honest about those sorts of things. I mean, I don't think anybody was shy about talking about how ugly Concord was.
Yeah.
You know, like nobody pulled their punches. I guess because these designs are like the shader, it's got a style to it, but it's not necessarily like the designs are bad. I think that was really Concord's biggest issue, where the designs were
Obnoxious. They're just
they
obnoxious.
were unrecognizable. Like you couldn't tell what the hell you were looking at. You couldn't tell like, oh, this character's a medic. Like I never would have guessed. Oh, this girl is like a fire mage. She doesn't look like a fire mage. You know, like the design and the function did not go hand in hand, and I think it was very obvious. I think it might be a little less obvious in Spectre Divide, because these characters still do kind of look like mercenary commandos, even though they're this flat shaded thing going on. So yeah, but yeah, no, I think the art style of the game is so big as whether or not it's successful. And I'll give these Spectre guys I'll at least give them kudos for trying something unique. I'll definitely give them that. But yeah, I mean, you look at a lot of other games out there, and they don't even try to be creative or unique. And when you think about it, it doesn't make sense to me, because like, what are the biggest, most successful games out there? World of Warcraft looks like a cartoon. Fortnite looks like a cartoon. League of Legends looks like a cartoon. You know, all of the Marvel Rivals is like literally a comic book come to life. You know, it's all of these games have like these really strong art styles, and then you just see a lot of games that just have no style at all, and they're just like super realistic, very very boring, very basic, and then they don't age well. It's so easy to like look. You look back at a game that was made even like 2 years ago that is quote unquote realistic, and you get that that uncanny valley like immediately. Like it hits you hard. You're like, oh my god, how did I think this game looked realistic? Yeah,
Yeah, nah,
yeah,
facts. That's hilarious. I can't get over that.
that's
Yeah,
pretty funny.
yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I don't know. Yeah, my boy, he's a hell of a modeler.
yeah,
I don't think I wouldn't put it on his head.
yeah. Now,
This look.
technically, they look like you can tell they're modeled well. Like that. That's not the argument. The argument is just like the faces are just not attractive. They're just
Yeah,
very
they're
like
so flat. They're so flat.
they're just the
Yeah,
proportions
they're
are all like the skin colors all look like not they look alien, but also just the proportions of their like noses and like jaws and just it just doesn't look right. But yeah.
yeah.
Anyways,
No, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's certainly not my flavor, but
well, the
you
game's
know.
failing, so whether or not we love it or hate it, the game is failing. So they've
That's
already had to
yeah.
lay off like half their staff already. I'm probably even worse than I haven't looked at the news. It's probably, let's be real, it's probably laid off the majority of the staff now. It's
Yeah, I know. I knew a friend of mine. She was a producer there, and she got let go last year. I guess
yeah,
they let go like 15 people at the end of I don't know, maybe August, September, October, something around there. They let go of like 15 people, and I think they're still trucking along over there. But yeah,
yeah, they're in denial. I can tell they're in denial. Like just insert baby crying meme right here. They do not know that what they've done. They think what they've made is like revolutionary and amazing. Like they think what they've done is amazing, and they're surprised at why it's not getting as much playtime and whatnot. But we know.
yeah. Isn't this the one that is made by that streamer guy?
He didn't make that. See, that's the thing. Everyone thinks he made it. He's just a. He honestly is just a gameplay advisor, but I don't even think they listen to him.
Okay.
I don't even think they listen to him because during some of his videos, I've seen him talk with the lead dev, and he, the guy's name is Shroud, the streamer. Shroud is like so confused when the dev speaks to him about what's in the game. It's like Shroud doesn't know it. like if Shroud was really the gameplay advisor, don't you think he would be first to know? Like that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, if he were really very involved in the development, he should definitely know what they're working on. But yeah, I guess they're probably just using some of his money and his clout to try to get
Yeah.
the game get eyes on the game and free advertising on his stream. I'm sure has thousands of people playing it.
Yeah, the game got shit
Yeah,
tons
you
of
got
funding.
to.
Shit tons of funding. I think it was like 75 million from what I
Oh
saw.
my, oh
So
my
that's a
God.
lot of money. I might be wrong with this,
Yeah,
but I swear I saw 75 million in funding. I think it's on their website. So you can
that's
check
just
it
so
out.
crazy. Like it's out of control how much money these games cost, and so much of it is it not necessary. Like so much of the budget goes to screwing up and like messing up scope and missing milestones and just bloating the game. Like so many games start off so much more modest and focused, and then as time progresses, the feature creep, I think is what it's called, it
Yeah.
just gets bigger and more ridiculous and more ridiculous. And yeah, there are a lot of unknown unknowns whenever you start a project. Like you don't know all of the factors that are going to appear over months of development. But I think it's really it's just really irresponsible for leadership and production to allow things to get to the point where you're spending almost like $100 million on like a double A shooter. You know, it's like it just, you know, it's people don't say no, or people are afraid to say no, or no one in the meeting is like there's no adult in the meeting that just says like, guys, shut up. Like that is cool. Yeah, wouldn't it be cool if we could do all of these things? Yeah, that would be great. However, we can't do it because we need to launch this by September, or this, you know, that's going to require an entire new process that we just don't have the bandwidth for. Like we've already set the schedule to be a certain way. You know, and I know, yeah, like, yeah, oh, you're the kill, you know, you're killing the fun, you're killjoy, nobody, you know, but really at the end of the day, man, you got to it's a product, right? It's a business, it's a product, and people's jobs are people's livelihoods are riding on you getting this out to market, under budget at best you can, you know, on time. And then you pray to God that it works out. And, you know, sometimes you need a little more time, but I think a lot of times, they have plenty of time to make these games. They just feature creep them, just you know, till they almost become not profitable. You know, throwing away. Like you asked me about the good old days. I'll tell you, man. I will tell you. We used to crunch so hard to get E3 demos out, and then we would throw that shit away. Like we would crunch for like 3 months to get an E3 demo out, to show it, you know, to show the you know, back in the day when E3 was a thing. I don't even think they do it anymore. But when that was a thing, and we would have a whole demo just for E3, half of the stuff was just smoke and mirrors. It didn't even work. Like it worked for that one small section, and we knew it wouldn't work, and we had no plans to actually get it into the video game. But someone made a promise. People were talking to the media. People were getting a little too excited and made promises they couldn't keep. And now we have to try to make it happen. And I mean, it happened all the time. And we all knew, like, man, we're never getting this in the video game. And like, it's not happening, but we'll make the demo and we'll crunch our asses off on the demo. And then the game would come out and it's not, you know, that area is not in there, or that feature is not in there. And people are like, hey, what's going on? Like, where is the thing I wanted? It's like that thing never existed in the first place.
Yeah. Oh man, that is crazy.
It's
Yeah.
wild.
Do you have any like final thoughts, or we just end it?
Man, you know, it's just been really fun. I hope that I've hoped that I've been useful. I hope if you put this up on the internet, somebody listens to it and it helps somebody.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. You are a wealth of knowledge, or a well of knowledge, I should say.
Well, yes,
A well.
an old manual, you know, Well, or you have to pull the bucket up by the rope. That's how I feel sometimes.
But it's full of water because yeah,
It's still full of water. I'm still full of. I've been doing this for damn near 20 years, give or take, depending on if you think modding is a actual experience. But yeah, no, I love this shit. That's the thing, man. I loved seeing the I loved seeing the YouTube stuff that you and your brother were doing. I cracked up at some of those LinkedIn posts with like entry level jobs looking for 1 to 2 AAA. Like I think one job you had listed, it was like more than one AAA development more than one AAA game under your belt. Like
yeah, for an entry
there's
level
no
job, yeah.
yeah, three like AAA games take 3 to 8 years to make. It's like how many of those do you have in your mid level? You're a senior. Like at that point, you're old.
Yeah, no, I raised the point where I was like, every time I do editing on those videos, I'm always worried that I'm going to run out of content. But then I just look at more jobs and I'm like, nah, never mind, I'm fine.
Yeah. Yeah, you're never gonna run out of content, man. Like, and even from, there's always this stuff coming out, and people just don't have any. That's one of the real, like, a lot of these companies, they shoot themselves in the foot, I think, before they even get off the ground because of things like that. Like you gotta write a job listing, but who's writing the job listing? You have to recruit people to do the job, but who is recruiting them?
ChatGPT too. Remember that ChatGPT is writing a lot of these too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I get instant rejections from jobs that I am more than qualified for. I just get that instant, like I get that canned ChatGPT. Thank you, but we're going with somebody else. Like if you see another listing that fits your experience, you should reach out. And it's like that last one fit my experience. Like I don't know what else you're looking for. Like
maybe they're just.
Like, I know you're getting hundreds of applications.
Maybe it's the pay. Do you include your rate in your application?
No, I don't actually.
Okay.
Here's a tip for young people. When you are interviewing for a job and they ask you how much money you want, never be the first person to say a number. Never say the first number ever. Make them tell you either say, I'm sure when we get to the point where we're talking about compensation, we can negotiate something that we're both happy with, and get them to give you the offer first. And if they don't give you the offer first, if they say, oh, we can't move to the next stage until we have a number for you, you ask them what the pay band is for the position. And they'll tell you, oh, it's 60 to 80. And then you say 80. You always say the top number. Always.
Yeah.
Never don't think, oh, if they said 60 to 80, I'm going to ask for 70 and they'll probably give it to me. They're not going to do that. They're going to offer you 60. They'll never do it. It's always going to be a negotiation. So, get the job offer, force them to give you the offer, and that way you see the number that they offer you, and then you negotiate. Or if that's not the option, you get them to tell you what the pay band is, and then you ask for the most money, because they're not going to offer you the most money. They're going to offer you that 7. Like if you were going to be happy with 70, you ask for 80 and they'll give you 70. They're not going to give you what you want. And you never want to put yourself in a position where you're undercutting yourself. Never say the number first, because you have no idea what the budget is for the job. Even the listing on the website, it's sometimes there are huge variances, like 80 to 150K for a job. Like that's a crazy variant. You just never say it. Make them say the number first, and then in your mind you go, okay, I have a realistic idea of what they're looking to pay. And then me personally, I always, if they say, oh, we have 130 budgeted for this, I say, yeah, I'll take 130, and then they're not going to give me 130. They're going to argue me. They're going to counter offer. Maybe they'll give me 115 or 120, but I know that they got 130. So I'll say, oh, well, give me 125 and we're good. Give me 120, and they might give me 122, Same thing with that 60 to 80. Like it doesn't have to just be over 100. It could be if I say, oh, it's a senior job and it's 60 to 80, I say, oh, I can do it. I can do 80. 80 sounds good. They might come back and they might offer me 70. And then I say, can you do 75? It will sort off, I would be very happy with 75. And maybe they'll give you 75. Maybe they'll give you 72. But you never know you're going to get that if you had just thrown out the number, like just a number. If you had no idea that it was 60 to 80, you could have said 55, way below what they would be willing to pay you. You never ever want to say the number first, unless of course you're doing hourly rates or something. Like if you're doing an outsourced position, like a lot of times an outsource or freelance, they have they might have a rate that they want, like, oh, it's going to be like 2,000 a model or 3,000 a model. I rarely like that. I say, oh no, my rate is this hourly rate. You think about what your salary what you would like your salary to be. You figure out the hourly rate for that, and then you say that, like, oh, I'll do freelance work for you, but it's my hourly rate is X. Mm. And then you make them negotiate with you based off of that. Because a lot of times outsourcers, they're going to try to take advantage of you. They're going to give you way more work than it's worth for a small amount of money, and you just do not want to deal with it. Like, if you do the math, some of these things like wind up being like under minimum wage. Mm-hmm. Some of these rates, if you're only getting paid a couple of $1,000s for a model that's going to take multiple days, and also all the days of feedback and things like we were saying earlier, like the change this or edit that, you're going to wind up working for peanuts, and it's not worth it. Like, you got a better, I think, as just a person who loves himself, and I have I have like a healthy self-esteem. I'm not going to debase myself, and I'm not going to work for peanuts just for like some type of ephemeral clout or something, just to say like, oh, well, I did a couple models on this game. You could just go onto ArtStation, find a couple of concept models, like find some dope concept artists that you like, and make their models in your spare time while you're driving like a FedEx truck for like 22, 23 an hour, and just make a decent little rate, pay your bills, and make dope art, and then get the full-time, get the good job, get the job that pays, get the job that matters. Don't work like slave labor for people who are just trying to take advantage of you just because you think it's cool to make video games. And I know it's easy for me to say. I've been doing this for 20 years. I know, and I understand young people, they're hungry. They want to be in the industry. They love this shit. And I don't blame you. But you got to stand up for yourself. You have to advocate for yourself, or else you will be taken advantage of. You will wind up running the numbers and realizing you just spent 4 weeks working for $14 an hour, and you were missing sleep and family functions, and your girlfriend's pissed at you and all this other stuff. And you basically you would have made more money if you were just stacking boxes somewhere for 9 to 5 and leaving at 5 o'clock and then having a life.
Yeah,
don't kill yourself with this. Don't do it.
You're totally right. Although one thing I will argue is it's a lot easier to do this negotiating thing if you've already got some experience.
Yes.
Because
yes.
bosses would just be like, you just not even take your word for it. But yeah, no, I
but
totally agree.
But that's a part of it. Like, having the confidence to say no, having the confidence to walk away from opportunities that are clearly going to take advantage of you, that builds up. Every time you say, it's like every time you walk away from something that's bad for you, I think it like reinforces your confidence in yourself as a person. Yeah. Maybe in the short term, you're going to feel a little bad, or you might second guess yourself, like, oh, I could have used that money. I could have used that like that would have been good for the portfolio, yada, yada, yada. But I think saying no to people who are trying to take advantage of you, who don't have the best interest in, your best interest in mind, I think that strengthens you as an individual and makes you just a more confident, more capable person. Being able to walk away from something that you really want but you know is bad for you, that's like a muscle you have to work out, you know?
Perfect. All right, I'm going to end it here, but Patrick, it was an absolute pleasure. I'll show some of your portfolio, probably
Right
as
on, right
some
on.
B-roll for this video. But yeah, absolute pleasure, and you are amazing to talk to.
Thank you, man. I